well, in the program it says I'm presenting on mapping informal settlements, and that's because in my past life, that was my main focus. However, I'm going to put a little spin on it and talk about some of our work at Spatial Collective, and talk about participatory community data collection for slow onset crises. And I'll talk in a minute what I mean by slow onset crises. First, by way of introduction, Spatial Collective is a startup technology company based here in Nairobi, and we're focusing on grassroots data collection, data management, local communication of data and information, and visualization solutions for companies and communities and organizations. I saw on the description of today's event that we are talking about new technologies, but also about the use of old or maybe better termed as existing technologies. So we use a combination of new and old tools to document the chronic or slow onset crises unfolding or being experienced by communities around the world. And we do this by way of partnership with local organizations. So that can be as small as the self-help group that our colleague from Well Told Stories talked about today, to the national and international organizations and addressing local community priorities. So what do I mean by slow onset crises? Well, in other words, we're talking about community development, about issues that are affecting communities and affecting their livelihoods on a daily basis that may constitute a small crisis that accumulates over time and leads to vulnerability or chronic vulnerability. So this is a picture taken by one of our community data collectors, and this was the blast on November 19th in Eastleigh, the Matatu blast. So, and these situations, we don't often hear of them happening on this side of town in the more middle to upper class neighborhoods, but they often happen in the more vulnerable and poor neighborhoods in Nairobi. And this is a picture from Mlango Kubwa, one of the villages in Mathare, and this is a garbage heap behind a high-rise building in the slum, and this garbage collection and the sanitation situation is a crisis from which the residents of Mlango Kubwa are trying their best to escape from, but maybe need some support in documenting and communicating these situations to the outside world. So in the era of big data and tools, web-based tools, social media to document situations around the world, why are we still talking about collecting information? And the communities that we often work in are still experiencing situations of data scarcity. Where are the local health clinics? What are the patterns of crime and violence in the communities? And you ask people and you say how many crimes have been reported in this neighborhood in the past 6 months, and nobody can tell you the answer. So we focus on community data collection, training local residents to collect information, and because a lot of the times the data that we look at and that we have access to, particularly in Kenya and countries across sub-Saharan Africa, is aggregated and made available at the national, state, or city level, and it's not available at the community level, and it's not actionable by local residents, local businesses, and service providers because it doesn't make sense to their daily lives. So, for example, if you hear the words or the names Kosovo, California, or Nigeria, you might think of a region in Eastern Europe. You might think of the west coast of the U.S., and you might think of the west coast of Africa, the largest African nation in terms of population. But the words Kosovo, California, and Nigeria to the residents of Mathare have a lot of different connotation. They mean, California is an area where a lot of the musicians coming out of and producing great music in the slums live. Kosovo and Nigeria are places of drug trafficking and changa brewing. So these are the people who understand the local context, who can get the most detailed and context-specific information, and might have the most insights into the meaning behind that information. So we work with local residents to collect information for other organizations, but in partnership with local youth groups and CBOs to try to address local issues. So this is Thuo collecting information with the GPS device about a dump site along the Mathare River. A little bit more about our process. We partner with organizations that understand community priorities and work to identify those priorities. And then we use a combination of data collection methodologies. You can see here we've got, this is in Taita Hills in Kenya. We're collecting GPS information, both roads and points of interest. And we stopped at the market along the way, and we also have a chicken. So we're using GPS technology, also video technology for documenting certain issues. And when we talk about older existing technology, sometimes the pen and paper is your best friend. And in some cases, the pen and paper can be innovative, and local residents can use it in a way that you would not anticipate. So there's been a lot of focus today on digital technologies, and we embrace them and we think that they're wonderful, but we also use pen and paper for map drawing exercises and for data collection, especially in situations where there's low mobile connectivity. So that's just a point to drive home. So once we've identified the best and planned for the best data collection methodology for the type of information that to address the community priorities that have been identified, then we work with the local residents to carry out the field work. And one of the major challenges, which has been addressed by one of the previous presenters, is how to classify certain types of information. So this is Juma's collecting data in Mathare, and he's probably trying to decide, okay, is this a dump site? Is this a drain? Is this a toilet? An open defecation site? So making sense of a complex world and creating information is often one of our biggest challenges, and how to structure that data. This is Margaret collecting data in Benin City in Nigeria, and the actual Nigeria, the country, and not Nigeria in Mathare. And she is mapping, as you see, this is a road. However, the road ends because there's a large gully, and it's also turned into a dump site. So is this a road? Is it a gully? Is it a dump site? These are some of the types of questions that our teams deal with in the field. The next step after gathering the information is processing it. So we also train staff members. So these are government staff members of the ICT Directorate in Benin City, entering information. And our colleague from the ICRC mentioned OpenStreetMap. They're using Java OpenStreetMap, which is an offline data editor, to translate GPS tracks collected in the field onto the desktop, and then upload them to create a base map of Benin City on the OSM server. So I'll just talk very briefly about an example of how all of these things come together. One of the projects that we were working on with local partners in Nairobi, the Africa Institute for Health and Development, and the World Bank in Korogocho, which is one of the informal settlements in Nairobi's Eastlands. This is a 2-year action research project looking at community responses to crime and violence, but also documenting and reporting on community incidents of crime and violence to look at where are these incidents happening, who is perpetrating them, who's the victim, what are the types of crimes, and how can we intervene. So the first step was to create a base map of Corgocho in OpenStreetMap. So this is now information that's freely available to anybody who's working in Corgocho in the future to download and to use for their own purposes. So OpenStreetMap is an open data online repository of geographic information that is citizen generated. And so that was the first step. And then the next step was to work with our community data collectors from 2 villages in Corgocho and to go back over the 2 years of data to GPS locate each crime that happened over the past 2 years. Now you might say, well, is that data very accurate because, you know, this is retrospective data collection, but these incidents, because they're local residents, they still remember every single incident and who was involved and how it happened. So the last step in the process is visualizing and or actually the second to last step is visualizing and communicating the data. So this is a platform that we've been building together with the partners that we work with to visualize and analyze the data online so they can also share it with their partners. This is not open data given the sensitive nature of the information. So a little bit different than some of the other projects that we've been talking about. So you can see the heat map and some of the sort of hotspots in Corgocho. Now this is overlaid with information generated during a participatory mapping exercise where local residents came together to identify area hotspots, the actual incidents, and community perceptions, which is not always the case. Just 2 more quick slides. So you can break this information down based on the types of crimes that were happening. So you can see here 52% of those 310 incidents were theft related. And interestingly, if you see the time of day here along the bottom, the most of the crimes are happening during peak hours at 6 a.m., 10, and then later in the afternoon. So these are the times that people are traveling home from work. These crimes are not happening in the middle of the night. So the last step is, of course, actually using the data and making a change, which is the biggest open question and the biggest challenge. And here's just one example of the Mathare environmental group in Lango Kubwa who are implementing these garbage bins for collecting waste and carrying it away. So we're working with them to look at how this information can impact their activities. So thank you very much.